What a job. There's a guy who invented the McRib. Anyway, now we have enough people in this room. We're going to start. Hi, my name is ZAETHRO. I doubt anyone in this room actually knows who I am. That's fine. You may know who Rex is, although you probably don't know him in his man-sona. You probably know him from his first sona, Rex. He's the tallest husky around.
Big, tall, husky, tall puppy, big puppy. I don't know. That's what Kaji calls
He
him
hugs
sometimes.
people.
But
I follow him around sometimes.
usually one of the tallest dogs around, but
Yeah.
not necessarily.
I'm a painted dog. You may have seen me lurking around. I'm also dressed up as Toriel because Toriel's in fashion right now. We're here to talk about fur in the wider world, I think is the name of this panel. And in essence, I want this to sort of be conversational because I can't know everything about what's going on. Like, there's a group of furs, I live in Orlando, and there's a group of furs that meets in Orlando, 30, 40, depending on what day it is. We can get, once a month, we can get a bunch of people together. But everybody just talks about how much they hate the rest of the world while that's happening. Like, they don't want to be part of it. We talk about fur conventions like they're home. And that may just be me. That may just be, I mean, Rex, your experience within this community is crazy eccentric. Yeah. Rex has not been in this community for 30 years. He didn't found the furry community. In fact, we've been furries for almost exactly the same amount of time.
Yeah, it was about 2013 for me.
Yeah, it's the same year for me. There's so little to it, and your introduction to it was by absolute happenstance.
Yeah, it was. I mean, geez, I'm old enough to almost be some of these people are grandfather. But anyway, oh, you want me to go ahead into it now?
Sure, why not?
Well, anyway, I was driving to work, gosh, I don't want to say how many years ago, and overheard, I believe it was Bob and Tom, and they're talking about furries and this and that, and dressing up in costumes, and they're laughing all the time like they do, and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting, you know, Halloween was like the greatest time of year when I was a kid, because I could dress up in costume, you know, it was great, it was normal, and not everybody looking at me, so anyway, I could do all that, and it was great, but anyway, fast forward, so I get back to, you know, my desk, and, you know, I'm on my computer, you know, and I always get to work early, so I gotta get the coffee going, so you can tell I can drink a lot of coffee, because I'm talking really fast, so anyway, I get it fired up, and I'm like, oh, I'm searching for furries, and I go, oh, well, that's not it. Well, that's not anything. Holy crap. I got to shut my computer off, delete all my cookies, and get all that stuff. That's not really what I'm into, you know?
What year was this?
Gosh, this is probably maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, okay, so it's been a long while.
Been a while. So then I'm like, okay, well, darn, that's not it. So I'll go off and just be a regular human doing all kinds of odd crap you do as a human. And my sister's an anthropologist. Actually, she gave a panel here on avians here back in 2013.
Just lie.
Anyway, yeah, anyway. So she teaches a class in
Anthrozoology?
Anthrozoology. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Why do I know that?
Well, anyway, and she touches on that a little bit about furries, and she was talking about a class, she was talking about furries, and I just started chuckling, started laughing, because, you know, I saw the stuff on that, and she goes, oh, no, it's not what you think, it's not what you think, you know. I started talking about it in class, and the kids stood up in class and said, hey, you know, I'm a furry, and set the whole class straight what the furry was, and I was like, oh, wow, that's different. I said, I don't know what I hit for those on the internet, so I got it, and I'm looking it up, and I go, oh my gosh, so I hit all the right sites that time. Then I got on YouTube, I'm done, this Duke, this dancing dog, I'm in, let's just get, so I'm like, okay, a commission, when can I get a commission? I gotta find an artist. So boom, got an artist, boom, this is it, and so, okay, here's the money. It's like, I actually got up like at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, I gotta send that money to PayPal, okay, here it is, DHC, boom, there's the money, boom, okay, when's the hardware store open? I got to get about 8 rolls of duct tape. I got to get this duct tape dummy. I get that in. So it's like, you know, that was like Saturday morning. Boom, I got that sent up. It was like Sunday, okay, we're after church, we're doing the duct tape dummy. And then Monday morning, it's next day, air it out. I was like, boom, this is it. Pull a plunger. This has been it. Yes, I've been this my whole life. This is it. So boom. So my life has been exciting ever since.
Yeah,
it's like I said, it's coming home.
Yeah, and contact point number 1, complete disaster. Contact point number 2, with one person for a class, and you said they don't even have. Your sister does not do a full class on furries. She does 15 minutes on furries.
Yeah, it's about 15 minutes tops, and
and now he's here.
Yeah. And I've gone back to that class twice in full suit.
That's all it
And
took.
I'm only there 10 or 15 minutes, and these kids just go nuts. I mean, the first time I was in there, I thought, oh, they're going to come out, they're going to want, what about all this sex stuff and all this yiff stuff and all that? Nobody ever brought it up. I was so disappointed. But no, anyway. It was like, oh, wow, you know, who made your suit? How'd you design this? How'd you come up with your name? And they were just like so into it. And the kids have stayed after class and wanted to know more and more and more. And it was so awesome. So
and all you had to do was be there in person to have all of that impression.
Just had to be there.
Yeah.
You know, I have to admit that resonates with my own personal experience.
How long you been in? Oh, sorry.
Let me describe it. So some of you might know I come from Russia.
Okay.
And for a while, I worked in a school, and I ran into a particular girl who was like, I believe, second or third grader. No, nobody ever knew that I am a furry. I did.
Of course not.
No, nobody else did. I mean, other than the furry circle, nobody in the real world knew that I'm a furry. And she didn't know anything about furries either, and she was too young to browse the website. Not to mention that the internet in Russia at that time was not very widespread. She behaved an awful lot as a furry. She said, I'm Linus. She purred. She did all the furry stuff. She didn't know what it's called.
Mm.
Yeah.
And she just felt like it. So, your own experience, for me, it resonates very much with that. Because my belief is that furries are really people in themselves. They just need to discover what that is.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And that's called initiation.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so like because I did initiation on her, and you encountered it in your own way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
No, you have to hit a trigger.
That confirms my.
Oh, that's. I don't think. I mean, raise your hand if you or someone you are very familiar with, if that sounds like the way they got into this, that they should have always been here and they just didn't know that this was the place that they should be. Raise of hands.
Yeah, well, for me it was in a similar
We got
way,
3 or
but
4.
I did that all myself. I discovered, I got in touch, or whatever, but.
You got lucky. You cracked that code yourself.
That was 1995.
Wow.
Wow. Good job, man. That would require like serious
Yeah,
research
because
too.
there were like, and again, in Russia, there was like internet.
Yeah,
that didn't exist.
That's
Yeah.
like wall after wall after wall on
Yes,
that.
yes.
I mean, and I have a very similar experience. I knew about furry for a long time. I know I was a furry back when I was 13. I'm 26 now. I knew I was 13. I knew I was when I was 13 after my first crush, which was on, as some of you may know, Ratchet the Lombax, which I kind of just put in the back of my mind as being another weird thing about me because I was also left-handed, way into computers, Aspergerian, didn't like team sports, and an overactive imagination, which a lot of people in this room probably can identify with a couple of those things. But I didn't know that's what furries were at the time. So, that just sat and festered for a long while. And then I went to MegaCon one year. It was the first con I'd ever gone to. It was in 2013. And I went there for the same reason a lot of people go to conventions, to hope that there's a group somewhere out there for you. Like you specifically, you'll find a thing that you're passionate about that you can't talk about with your normal friends because they're not cool enough to know all the inside dirt on whatever you happen to like. And I didn't find that until the last half hour I was at MegaCon, when a white wolf fursuiter just happened to be walking around. Now, for those who don't know, and why should you, MegaCon and Furry Week in Atlanta are counter-programmed. They are on the same weekend, or at least they were on 2013. So it was basically by the grace of some higher entity that this even happened. And when it did, all it took for me to make this switch was to see a fursuiter in person behaving the way fursuiters do. And I felt like a sleeper agent, like Manchurian Candidate style, and my trigger word was a dog on 2 feet. Like, it broke my head for a little while. I had gotten out of college, I had a stable job, I assumed based on the way I acted the rest of my life that I was a psychopath, and I was just going to deal with that. And then it turned out, no, I'm a furry. And so I spent 9 days in hotel rooms, because I was flying around on business trips. Props to cognitive dissonance, by the way. Being able to shake people's hands and say, yeah, I'm doing fine, how about you, when they ask you how you're doing, in the middle of just your brain being on fire, like, props to that. But I basically went through every major memory I had for about a decade and went and just added because I'm a furry to the end of it, and suddenly all of it made sense. And that was relieving eventually, but it was insanely stressful at the time. I still refer to that moment in my life, those 9 days, as the 9 days to my friends, because that's just, it was that. I lost 10 pounds in 9 days. It was fun. And I've actually done that since. But that's neither here nor there. I'm in the same boat. There was basically, all I had to do was get the exposure, because I knew about furries, I knew about animalistic art of all of its forms. I'd been on the internet, and I knew that the internet wasn't very kind to us most of my life. But it turns out that being there in person is what it takes. And the reason I convened this panel was the wider world. The way that we interact with the wider world, sure, it's nice to have more allies than enemies, and we could be doing more to help with that. But the thing I want to make absolutely sure that we're doing is identifying people who need to be here so that they show up here. Because, I mean, it's fine to have the apathy of the public. It's fine for people to go, oh, they're just having fun, whatever, and to, you know, hide the seedier elements so that we don't accidentally destroy ourselves, shoot ourselves in the foot. The media, which we do all the time, I mean, our favorite tagline, the one that we generated was "Furries ruin everything." And a lot of people take a weird, perverse, gleeful pride in that. I saw you smirk.
No, I was agreeing with you.
No, I know.
I'm agreeing with you that this is, that, like, yes, this panel is everything that I agree with.
No, it's horrible that it comes to that, but I think it's so important, because without that, again, I was perfectly willing to accept that I was just broken without this here. And that, I'm not going to say it fixed it, but at least I know what's wrong now. And because I'm here, being in this room turns furry from an abnormality into a normative thing. Because a furry who's alone, in furry the way that I understand it, and I assume, I mean, I guess we'll ask the question, raise your hand if you're willing to raise your hand. This is a very easy way to get science out of this. Raise your hand if being a furry is existentially important to you. Of course, of course. You're going to give me trouble the whole panel, I can see it.
I don't mean to, I'm sorry.
You might have heard of that phenomenon called the hardest part is being the second person. There was sufficiently famous, I believe, clip on YouTube where some guy dances, there's a lot of people on the beach and some guy just starts dancing. And he dances and dances and dances, and then somebody else stands up and starts dancing with them. Then within like 15 seconds, a third guy stands up and starts dancing. And the next, and the next, and the next.
That's why dancing can't be legal in public places.
And then, like, the entire beach dances. So the hardest part is to be the second. Because when you are the first one, you are like some kind of crazy man out there or whatever. But when you have a follower, yeah, people start seeing that following is okay.
When you're in this building, it's not a problem.
And now when you see, when everybody sees one guy is following, that outlier is no longer alone. He has a follower. Maybe there is something about what he's doing, and then boom, in no time everybody's dancing. So
Hopefully.
being second is the hardest part.
Yeah, no, it certainly becomes an issue. I apologize for having these notes up here. I way over prepared for this. Rex,
Yes.
so you have a fursuit,
Yes.
and you've been around in it a lot.
Yes.
Name some of the places that you have fursuited.
I've fursuited at a church before. Come on, think about it. It's just amazing.
The apathy is great.
I was laying in bed, and it's like, you know, they're having a car show at our church, kind of an outreach to the community, and I just stayed home in bed. So they kept calling me. We want you to come and do that thing you do. What? Come here and put that dog thing on. So you sure? I said, come on. I was like, okay. So I go to the church, and I go, okay, I'm going to the basement of the church, find a place to change into my fursuit, and I'm like, it's kind of like something unholy in a holy place. Anyway, so I went, I put my suit on. People went nuts. I mean, there's people in their 80s. They're just laughing. They got to come up and hug me. Kids coming up, and it's like, oh, man, I felt so great. Well, I was just totally blown away. I mean, positives, you know, that sounds like almost like a negative. It just went so great. It was just so... People just loved it. You know?
In the last possible place someone would assume that would happen, outside of a physical manifestation of 4chan.
And I've suited at the... actually, I've done that twice now at the church. Now, this year, they said... They pulled me in the meeting for formation of this big car show and stuff they had. It goes, well, we want to have more of these, like, furry things. Can you get more of these furry things that come to this? I kid you not. I said, really? I said, okay, well, I could probably get a few. I said, you know, so yeah, we want more of those furry things. People like that. I said, okay. I said, you know, there's kind of a negative thing. That's fine. Just bring them out. So, you know, we want. It's like, okay, well, we can do that next year. No problem.
You tried to do it. You tried to do it backwards. You tried to warn them against it, and they're like, whatever, it'll be all right.
What about during the service? Anything for having furry during the service? Did they ask about
Oh, no, it's nothing like that. No, it wasn't like that. No, I haven't done that yet.
Is there anything wrong with that?
Is there
I
a
don't
place
know.
for it? That's the thing. Would there be a reason to do it? Like in extracurricular activities in the church, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, we had one lady in the
Perfect.
church who organized different things like that. She was trying to think of a way she could work a dog into it, and never got around to it. But anyway, yeah, I don't think...
I'm wondering if Pope's recent speech that church needs to reimagine itself to attract younger followers.
Yeah.
Was it a Catholic church?
No, it was a Lutheran church.
See, it wouldn't even have mattered.
But anyway, it was fun. I mean...
First Lutheranism, then Catholicism, then we'll...
I mean, next year, if the schedule works. Just... But anyway, the other thing, local civic organization, they have pumpkin races. Small town in Illinois, they have pumpkin races each fall. I don't know. They put wheels on pumpkins and the kids roll them down the street. But a little prize, something like that. I've done that for 2 years now. Had a friend with me, Electropod did it this year. They came to us and said, this is fantastic. We want you to come every year. You know, bring as many as you can. It's great. The kids love it. People love it. It's just amazing. I haven't had really a negative thing in outside the fandom suiting yet.
Now, will say,
Yeah.
you're maybe not alone, but I think you did get lucky in a couple respects on that.
Yeah,
if
that's
only
true.
because I've heard a lot of other stories. There's a reason our tagline is the one it is.
Yep.
But you'll notice something in the through line. You only brought up the sex thing one time in that whole conversation as a warning to the people who were there.
Yeah.
You essentially did not give them a shot to accidentally find out anything terrible about this because you served as a full-time ambassador for our organization while that was going on.
Yeah, I did my absolute best. And you know how your vision's reduced to being in suit. So I was always cognizant of the fact, okay, there's little kids running around me. I'm so tall. Where exactly are my hands? Would they be any place that might even be conceived as being kind of questionable? So I'm always kind of very, very aware because I don't want anything to look really bad, you know. Other place that I've suited 2 years now is a place down in Peoria called Wildlife Prairie Park. Been invited back there. Be prepared if you suit out in public. you'll have to provide your real name, possibly social security numbers, driver's license numbers, because there's a lot of pedophiles out there, and places just want to make sure. I know there's an incident at one zoo in the Midwest. They had a thing for Halloween called Boo at the Zoo. I know they have one up here by Chicago. The smaller zoo, they had one. A bunch of guys in suits just showed up on their own. Well, that was nice. Everybody kind of liked it. And after a while, the zoo's going, who are these adults running around in these suits? Well, they called the cops on them. So that was, you know, this. Well, the zoo's got to, they got to protect themselves. So there's a bunch of little kids running around. Why there's the adults here in these suits, you know?
And they didn't ask.
Yeah, they didn't. You got to.
Just ask.
Yeah, got to ask.
There's an old mantra about asking forgiveness rather than permission. Whoever thought of that is an asshole. Just ask. People are way, it turns out, if you're willing to ask people, they're way nicer than you can imagine. There's a, I think it's Adam Savage of the Mythbusters talked about this. If you want to do something illegal, tell the cops. Because as soon as the cops are on your side, you don't have to worry about it. That's how they get away with doing all the nonsense they do on the Mythbusters. They tell the cops they're doing it, which no one thinks of at first blush, but it makes some sense. Like, it's one of those things you just don't think to ask. But if you do, suddenly you're in control of the situation in a way you wouldn't be otherwise. Because otherwise you're forcing other people to come to conclusions about what you're doing. I mean, if you just showed up in a fur costume, people would have to ask you what the hell is going on. But because you had someone there who could vouch for you, because they know that you're not crazy, that crazy, it worked out. And that's all it took. Like, people, this will be a refrain, a motif, if you will. We don't have even close to as many enemies as we think we do. Like, we tend to make enemies out of a lot of people because a lot of people latch on to the other things in furry that tend to be a problem. We, as a group, tend to be pretty neurotic. I know I personally, on the Ocean personality scale, my N score is 100. My brain's on fire. And that makes me wary around other people, but they don't want to hate you, probably. There are a couple jerks. But generally speaking, they don't have a lot of friends either. Take a shot at it. Like, I understand I'm talking to people who are very anxious. I'm one of them, and I'm trying to do this partially as an experiment to see if I even can. And, I don't know, is it going okay? All right? I'll take it. Just ask. People don't want to. This is going to sound like it perfectly this is going to sound like it perfectly contradicts the thing I was just talking about, but I promise it doesn't. I was taught to do this. I hate that on airplanes, the Federal Aviation Administration finally said that you could keep your phone on the whole time. Because I love talking to people on airplanes. Because you get, unlike in a normal conversation where you get 5 to 15 minutes to talk about the weather, sports, and politics, all of which suck. No one wants to talk about any of those. You get 2 hours with someone, and if you don't hit it off, whatever. Everybody goes back to what they were doing. No harm, no foul. You're on an airplane. If anybody starts shit will go down on an airplane. You're not in any danger. But I've had some of my most fascinating conversations in the world on airplanes because I have no idea who I'm sitting next to. They're apparently doing well enough to be on a plane. Other than that, it could be anyone. I've had fantastic conversations with them. But now that I'm a furry, I've had a fun twist on this, where I have a timing issue about where I bring up my favorite topic. I was on a flight back from Gen Con 2 years ago. I was sitting next to a daughter and a father who were board game distributors. They had never been to a convention before. They were not nerds in any proper sense. They didn't belong there. But they had a great time because it turns out that when you meet people, they're usually okay. I think Howard Stern actually has a thing on this. He can't make fun of people he's met because everybody's so nice in person. And anyway, Gen Con was fun for them. It was fun for me. We just traded stories for 2 hours on this plane ride. And the daughter and father were talking slightly distantly about how weird some of the things were. And I was just evilly thinking in the back of my mind, it's like, you have no idea who you're sitting next to. So we're having this pleasant conversation. And then on the way to landing, there was a lull in the conversation. I said, do either of you know what a furry is? And the daughter says, no. And the father gets so much adrenaline pumped into his brain at that second that he can't speak, but he manages to say, I have. That could have been the end of everything. That could have been shit going down, maybe. And granted, like I said, I'm a little evil sometimes. I did get the sadistic twinge I was looking for of proving to these people that I'm an upstanding citizen, and also this is going on in the background. And that little cognitive dissonance, I do get a lot of glee out of this, but please don't miss the point. If I had said that up front, if I had said, do you know what a furry is, as the first part of that conversation, it would have been over. All I did was prove that I'm not a bad guy, and suddenly, whatever this... I didn't ask the father what context in which he knew what a furry was, other than to know it was bad. That was enough for me. But if I just started there, he would have been in control of the whole impression of what a furry was. He would just have to refer back to whatever was in the back of his head about what being a furry means, and I may never have talked to them. We wouldn't have had a fabulous conversation, by the way, at the end of which, even though once the blood got back into his head, I got a hug from both of them by the time I was off the plane. Like, that seems like a win to me. I don't know. In the other scenario, everybody loses, because he gets to address it on his terms, and his terms suck for whatever reason, and it was up to me to fix them. And all I had to do was act like a normal person, just that little span of time. I had to have fun with another human being for them to seem like I'm a good person to be around. Imagine, like, that's what they want out of a conversation. I apologize for being sarcastic. You're not supposed to do that when you're trying to do teachable things. But just be a nice person for the first little while. It works wonders for people's impressions of everything you are. All the labels suddenly get tinged with this part where it's like, oh, this is like, this person's all right. And most of the people in this room, when you're not just being jerks about it, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep picking on you because it's too much fun. Most people are not, what are you doing? I haven't seen you the whole convention. Anyway, I lost my train of thought. Rex, how are you doing?
Doing great. Well, I'll tell you what.
Don't be a jerk. Don't be a jerk. Does that work? Is that the, I think that works.
I'm afraid that's not, I guess you are lucky. Because I had exactly the opposite experience, and more specifically, I was talking to the person like for a few hours.
How long ago? What year are we talking?
Like maybe a month.
Oh, wow.
Oh, really? Super
Yeah,
recently.
And well, that was on Skype. And she at some point, and finally she asked, why is your avatar a leopard? And I said, have you heard the meaning of the word furry? And then there was explosion.
Yeah.
And guess what? I mean, like, this totally blows my mind, because her biggest complaint was not that you are doing weird things, blah, blah, blah. Is that you are hugging people that you don't know.
That's how peace starts.
Not that you draw crazy horns with big dicks. Not that you like do stuff in fursuits. No, you are hugging people you don't know. That was what she was vehemently objecting against.
How well did you know this person?
Random.
Just random?
Online website, whatever.
The online thing is a bizarre... That's a bizarre element, and it's kind of a cruel irony. We're all in this room because of the internet. If we didn't get... Because you can't walk up to someone... You can walk up to someone and make a Star Trek reference, and people can go, oh, I love Star Trek. You can do no such thing in furry. You need the internet for the context.
Star Trek, then, in the conversation to lead into...
And then lead into furry?
Yeah.
I like your style, but...
canon, there are furry species.
That takes a while to do. That's what you need the breadth of the internet for. The internet short-circuited that. That's why it happened in the last 20 years.
I'm so sorry. It's just so funny that like I want to expand a little bit on it. So she was like, "Are you going to furry conventions?" Yes. She about crazy said, "But no, hold on, people go to Star Trek convention, people go to like Transformers convention, whatever. How is that okay? Well, you see, furries are about all kinds of stuff. So are you okay? Like, if you are okay, or will people who go to Transformers convention, are you okay with me going to let's say the Lion King convention? Yes, but it needs to be just Lion King. It cannot be Lion King and like Robin Hood and other Disney stuff. No, just like one time. Oh, that was crazy. I'm sorry.
But we end up in this awkward spot where after having been formed by the internet, it seems like almost all of our success stories, with a couple exceptions everybody is aware of, they happen in person. That seems like the easy ticket. All of your good experiences, they happen in person. All of mine happen in person. Yeah. That seems to be a cruel irony we have to tolerate, where the prophets of the fur community got together on the internet and figured out that this was a cool thing, met in real life, found out it was an awesome thing, and now they have to spread the word. And there's something about seeing it in real life that makes the difference. And beyond the convention space, and we try to keep the conventions penned in. I mean, Uncle Kage has a smoke and mirrors tactic to the way that he controls the media around Anthrocon, and for what it's worth, does an admirable job. I think he does more good than harm on that. But I wonder if it's missing something. All right, now I'm seeing all sorts of people here. I didn't think we were here. I feel like we're missing something where we talk about, we try to talk around, you know, I believe a lot of people here are probably familiar with only 10% of us are sexual deviants. Like, we end up with these stupid little sound bites on the web, coincidentally enough, of people trying to defend the community, and they're either super defensive about everything, where they're essentially just trying to keep back the fact that everyone thinks we're flamboyant zoophiles, or they hide behind a couple of things that I just don't see as good enough to excuse everything we're doing here. We talk about all the activities that go on at these conventions. We talk about the charity work. We talk about celebrities that come by as guests of honor. There's a parallel we're drawing here that I think is really, really weird. Those are what churches talk about. Churches talk about all the extracurricular activities they do. They talk about how you meet all your friends. They form a community, and more than anything, you know, they're hostage against the onslaught of atheism over the last decade has been, we're charitable organizations. Most of them are charitable organizations. We're doing the exact same thing, but they're using a weapon we aren't in this fight. We're not talking about the really good part of this. We did a poll at the beginning, and we may as well take the poll again. Raise your hand if you're willing to raise your hand. Raise your hand if you believe furry to be existentially important to you in such a way that if it were to be removed from your life, it would cause you significant emotional or personal damage. That's not a, I mean, that's a majority at least. And I guess we can bring the question back. How many of you would have a hard time replacing this in your life if it were to go away? That's almost everyone in this room. So what is it in that? You can replace activities, you can replace charity, you can replace everything this convention has except the furry part. The furry part has to stay. I was in this convention hall last year, schlepping around to ZAETHRO, and at the elevator, just during a lull one day, I was approached by someone who didn't want a hug, didn't want a picture. They were asking for a friend that wanted a hug from me, but they were too shy to approach me. And the hug is really a pretty, raise your hand if you're a fan of hugs. Huh. No, you don't know what you're missing, man. Well, yeah, we still love you. We'll let you stay around, but oh, so good. The hug is really a pretty incredible symbolic physical gesture because the way you approach it is unmistakable. I mean, you do this for almost no other reason. So you approach there is some amount of fear that is exchanged. There is a trust to it. You expose your sides and your front, if you're doing it right. You expose your side and your front to someone else, and they expose theirs to you, and you then cover and protect each other. Like the symbolism and even just physical, practical notion of what a hug is I would verge to call it profound. And yet, we end up getting that marginalized because we don't talk about it with any amount of reverence. This child, I'm going to call him a child, they may have been as old as I was, actually flinched and shrunk back from me when I first started approaching them. So maybe their friend, it was entirely possible, their friend was just an asshole who wanted to make them feel uncomfortable. But the hug has a natural defense mechanism against this, because after doing that, they then went like this. And the gravity of that tiny gesture, unmistakable, was enough that I was actually slightly afraid to approach them at that point, because I was intimately aware of how much this was suddenly going to mean to them. And we did it, and we meant it for about 15 seconds, and we were both very well off after that. I actually saw a smile on this person's face that didn't go away for the remainder of the time I was around them. Why does that story not come up? Why do we not talk about those stories? That is like the missing link. We have formed a community that is, and in that moment, I'm sharing fear with someone else, and we are confronting it together. And in fact, the stronger the fear is between the two of us, arguably the better off we are when it comes to the embrace. I mean, Rex, you agree with me on that? Yeah. We've done this a lot. Don't give me that look. But it's bizarre to me that we don't talk about that. We have managed to crack a code, sociologically speaking. We are, according to the IARP, according to NUCA, a handful of people here are probably familiar with Dr. Planty, runs a reputable shop figuring out what furries are on about, which we will be doing a highly disreputable version of that in the panel that comes right after this, so feel free to stay tuned for that. Furries may be the only example of dehumanization that has been studied by sociology that does not result in a drop in self-esteem. That is crazy. That is a thing that doesn't happen. When you dehumanize, it causes psychological damage of one form or another. And you may think a handful of furries are screwed up. Guess what, guys? A lot of people are screwed up. Not just us. Not just our problem. A lot of people drink. A lot of people have sex, you know? It's kind of weird. I wouldn't have guessed from the outside. But we've got this thing. And that's the thing that you share in person that you cannot share online. And we draw a lot of art trying to make up for the fact. We draw a lot of art to remind ourselves of what this is like. I do anyway. I just wish that was easier to communicate. And I would implore anyone in this room who has the capacity to do so, to endeavor to find the people who may accidentally really need to be here and they just don't know it. Because, I mean, it's fine to have fur fans, it's fine to have more friends, but there are people here who, if this goes away, it will be a dramatic loss in their life, and they may not even be aware that it's here in the first place, because all they see is the Tumblr furry train wrecks, or they just search what is a furry online, and nonsense ensues. And granted, I love the eternal garbage fire that is the internet as much as anyone. I love going on 4chan. The hate is just, it's something I can use in my daily life to like appreciate the way people are in the back of their head. I love that. But there's something to this that we fail to convey. And I wish we could figure out, and we only have, what, like 15 minutes to figure it out? So hopefully in the next 15 minutes, we're going to figure out how to solve this problem. But I feel like I've at least outlined it. Is everybody okay with that? Does everyone agree that this is a thing worth pursuing? Figuring out how to spread this correctly? Raise your hand if you're willing to raise your hand. Raise your hand if you agree with that. All right, well, I feel like my job's done. How about you, Rex?
Yep.
I would like a bit of clarification, please. When you talk about dehumanizing an application to furry-done, can you please, like, that word has multiple meanings if you...
Oh, absolutely.
Literally. Can you please expand on what exactly you meant?
I wish I could expand on it in a scientific sense. I'm sure Nuka has a specific meaning behind it, but it is the idea that you do not relate in some either mental or emotional way to the fact that you are human. Being a dog or a cat is rather directly dehumanizing.
Why I'm having this problem is that prefix D means removing something. While I, talking about furries, I wouldn't call it dehumanizing, I would call it animalizing, adding, not removing.
So you're one of the people, they had a survey question where they talked about if you feel less than 100% human, you're one of the people who would argue with that it's more than 100%.
No. Well, once again, you know, the problem I have with the surveys is that most of the surveys are built in a way the survey creator thinks about things. So
Bingo.
If I feel 100% human and 100% animal for 200% total, that's entirely different feeling. But there is no such answer on this freaking survey.
Yeah, exactly.
And he did have to introduce that.
Yeah, be careful of any surveys you take about the fandom. Don't quote me on that, but I'm telling you, think about what this man said and what's on that survey. Think about that.
For what it's worth, Nuka's aware of that.
With all due respect, have you heard like about, have you ever taken like that IQ measurement test where they say like, you have a picture which one is combination of the other two, or like you know, kids were given like a human, a fish, a cat,
And you have to say human catfish.
Whatever, yeah. So like, and the right answer was like a human because it's two-legged, and the little girl pointed to fish, and then they said why? Because they said everybody else is warm-blooded and fish is cold-blooded. Yeah. Her answer is perfect, but it's not the answer that the creators of the survey had in mind.
For what it's worth, as a public service announcement, the Stanford Binet IQ test has been a complete sham since about when it came out.
But I mean,
Don't worry about it.
I was just trying to illustrate. That's why I'm saying on that survey that I'm less than 100% human, because like I have to divide 200.
And that's a point Nuka's taken. Oh, absolutely. No, that's something Nuka's been he's had to deal with over time, because it turns out we're a hard group to pin down. I mean, all it takes to be a furry is to say you're a furry. So it covers a lot of ground. Poems are what poets write. Furries are what furries call themselves. Yeah. I mean, for crying out loud, we got furries that don't like hugs, apparently. If you stick around, I will fix you.
My personal opinion or whatever is more a definition. If 3 furries tell you that you're a furry, you're a furry.
So much peer pressure, jeez. Do we have any particular questions, comments about this? And this panel went half an hour. I'm perfectly satisfied with that.
Yeah, in regards to what you're saying about flying, I've had very similar experiences in taking Amtrak.
I can believe
Cool.
that. That sounds, yeah. Who's the weirdest, just completely out there? Was anyone weirder than you?
A few people.
Okay.
Oh.
That's good to hear.
Take it long enough, it'll eventually beat a few of them.
I was going to say, instead of saying dehumanizing people so they act more like animals, maybe you could say humanizing animals acting more like people.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, that's the anthropomorphized animals is you're adding to what being an animal is. That's absolutely. And that's part of the reason the dehumanization thing comes up is because that has a negative connotation normally. Dehumanizing automatically is to your point, the prefix does mean to remove, but in our context, it really is more of a morphing into. Okay, fine. That was the end of my sentence.
I was going to ask, in the context of spreading the fandom, I guess, what is it something that you look for in someone who could potentially benefit from furry?
They look scared of it. They look scared of it. Most people, if they know what a furry is, there are basically two things you know one of two things about the furry community, or I guess most people are in one of two camps. They are either completely unaware of what the word means, which means they're over the age of, 25, and the second group thinks we're all flamboyant zoophiles.
That would probably count for everybody I work with.
Oh, God.
No.
I worked for a seed corn company for the last few years. Oh, my gosh, the jokes.
Who do you work with? Who do you work with? What kind of people do you work with?
It's a foundry.
Oh, okay.
Oh, great. Wow, can you cast some stuff for me? Oh, God.
Shut down.
Kirsch or Beaver Dam or... I'm sorry, you probably don't want to mention. Okay.
You're way too excited
I'm
about
trying to
this.
remember. I'm sorry. I like foundries. Sorry.
Did you work at a foundry?
No, I didn't. I always
Were
wish
you
I did.
jealous?
They're kind of
Yeah,
dirty,
you're
hot
jealous.
work.
That's what I
But
thought.
anyway, when you got to get parts made, it's kind of hard to find foundries anymore.
I'm sorry, what was your question? I have a horrible memory.
I was just asking, what do you look for in someone who could...
Yes, sorry. Sorry. No, it's people who tend to be sheepish, pardon the pun. They are people who have feelings inside, and I apologize for this just sounding super sappy, but this is just how it is. They're people who have these horrible, deep, dark little feelings inside about wanting to care about things too much. And the only way to coax those people out, it turns out, is to come into contact, is to expose them to big fluffy things or to hug them, and I understand that's an uphill battle.
Should we crash
Both
protest?
I don't see why not. It wouldn't do any more damage. No, don't do that. You're a monster. I'm sorry, did someone say something?
Actually,
That's person's outside.
I would like your opinion on something. So
No, you
I
wouldn't.
work with I wouldn't call her black inside person, but she does not have a lot of compassion for other people. You know who I'm talking about. So she doesn't like a whole lot. I brought my suit in to the place where I work at, where they don't think I'm creepy or crazy. They think it's really cool.
Nice.
And so that.
What do you dress
immediately-
as?
Huh?
What do you dress as?
Amstaff. Pitbull. Yeah.
This is for everybody else. I know what you dress as. I'm painting a word picture for people.
American Staffordshire Terrier, Amstaff for short, but you can call me a Pitbull. That's okay. That's how I kind of meant it to be as. But that's a backstory for another time. So I brought her in, and her whole demeanor she just opened up, and that followed with that question with what would benefit bringing someone into the fandom. Well, then she proceeded to tell me way more information than I needed to know, but it was still her opening up as, oh, this is pretty cool. And as she was asking me more questions about it, it was kind of apparent that wall broke. Where do you think I should go from there?
Wow.
I know. That's why I'm like,
Just
I'm just an Amstaff. I don't know what to do.
yeah.
Does this person seem furry?
She could be if she would stop being so hateful. And that's why I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to be.
Time heals all wounds, I think would probably be the way to go with that. As long as you accidentally ruined at least part of this person's cerebrum, I think the damage will gradually fester. It helps. Once you are on a path to trying to actually understand what's going on in this community, there are plenty of ways to find how great it actually is. And as long as you have not come across as a complete monster to them, you have tainted.
I've said some things I'm not proud of, but I've said some really mean things to her in response of her saying mean things to me, of course, because trying to be good, but
I'm not saying this
hard.
is easy. There's a lot of threading the needle to all of this.
But
It is.
to keep opening up to it because I think the fandom will help her in a different way than me.
Sure.
Because maybe then, again, she'll stop being so judgmental and hateful if she sees a bunch of animals roaming around. Like
That we're not monsters.
Ocelot? No?
Also cheetah.
Close enough. If she sees, if she is introduced to a fandom that is not about, for the most part, judging people for who they are.
And even if that fandom doesn't happen to be furry, you did your part. There are plenty of other fandoms that are not complete garbage from the inside and out that you will have done your part to make humanity a little bit nicer for people with demons.
I tried the brony fandom, but that didn't work out. That really didn't. She looked at me like... And then I come in with a big old pit bull costume, and she's like, "This is fantastic."
I'm sorry, you had a question?
I have a question, but more of some comments. I'm very openly furry. I wear the furry T-shirts with the tail on the weekends quite often. At work,
Where do you work?
I work for a food industry trade association.
Oh, okay.
Office work for the most part.
So office.
I would bring in photos of the fursuiters. Before I got a fursuiting myself. And for the most part, all they had heard about furry was that infamous CSI episode.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course, oh, these people have what's the word you're talking about? I said, no. This is television, this is fiction. This is what we do. This is who we are.
Yeah.
Ask me questions about what you think we are. I'll tell you what is my view of the fandom.
And they sort of implicitly trust you because they work with you.
Yes.
They're not just getting this from outer space. This is the difference between the media side of this and the non-media side of this that I think we need a distinction between. It's fine to use smoke and mirrors when you're talking to the media because they have a detached understanding of what you're talking about, and for the most part, they're just getting sound bites. But in this case, it works better if you just directly tell them no. I'm sorry, could we let him finish and I'll come back to you?
The point is that there are a number of people who I've worked with for now over a dozen years who look forward to bringing in the latest pictures from Furfest.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's a fun thing.
For Halloween, I use my different fursuits when we have a Halloween gathering. Another similar point. In a local shopping mall, again, I wear the furry stuff quite often. There is one of the clerks. She identifies as furry, but she had gotten flack from other so-called furs, I call them, because they're telling her she isn't really a fur because she doesn't see.
Oh, well, that falls into its own.
That's garbage.
Yeah.
If you think you're a furry, you're a furry. Welcome here.
Yeah.
Here's some resources, check them out.
We are dangerously inclusive.
Yeah, so talking about your question, her question she left. So for one, talking about CSI, what kind of profession do you work with? Just think about, like, there are shows about every single profession pretty much on the TV. Think about one of those shows and tell them, you remember that episode of such and such show? How much truth does it have in it? That was the same thing. Yes.
Yeah.
Like, you use the example that they can relate to, so you can attach one example to another and play on their feelings. Because, like, every time I see like a show about like hacking computers, I want to kill them, you know.
Yeah.
So the same thing. If we have the same feeling, and then say that's CSI, same thing.
Yeah.
You know, transfer the feeling. And about that lady who left, I was going to suggest that I was wondering if she hugged that other lady, because that's actually neuroscience. Hugging actually releases in the brain the hormone called
Oxytocin.
Yep.
That is the one that is directly causing bonding.
Yep.
So that's and that was proven in like many experiments. And we've seen those like baby monkeys who
Oh, oxytocin's how you form tribes of people. It is that drug.
Baby monkeys who were held like in a cage with a bud and a surrogate mother, just like pretty much a doll in the shape of monkey.
Yes. You can do horrible things to animals with oxytocin.
Yes, and the ones who could hug like that surrogate monkey, they grew up perfectly normal, and those who did not have any kind of other person to connect with, they grew up antisocial.
And as I think as much a capo as can be put on this panel, please be that surrogate mother for somebody. Find somebody to be that surrogate mother for. You only need to find one person, and you have done your job. It is now 4 o'clock. You can either stay. I'm about to switch from, we're about to switch, not us, but the next panel is basically the exact opposite of this panel. Here we were talking about the dire straits of potentially not finding lost souls. The next panel is where we're going to ask flash polling really stupid questions. So if that sounds fine to you, feel free to stay. Otherwise, thank you for participating.